The results of the Bougainville referendum are in. By an overwhelming majority, the population voted for full independence from Papua New Guinea. However, as I'll show in this video, the path to statehood is far from straightforward. There are a number of steps that will have to be taken before it can become the world's newest country, and it may still face at least one major obstacle. Hello, welcome to Independent Thinking, a channel dedicated to international relations, statehood, independence and the origins of countries. My name is James Ker-Lindsay. In late November and early December 2019, the people of small Pacific island of Bougainville went to the polls to vote in a historic referendum. Held under the terms of an agreement that brought to an end a bitter civil conflict on the island 2 decades ago, the choice they faced was between greater autonomy within Papua New Guinea or full statehood. By an overwhelming majority, the people of Bougainville voted to go their own way. The final results showed that of the 88% of eligible voters who turned out, 177,000 voted in favour of statehood. In contrast, a mere 3,000 voted for more self-government. In other words, support for independence ran at 98% of those voting and over 85% of all eligible voters. By any measure, this was an overwhelming result in favour of independence. Given this result, it would seem to be tempting to assume that the next steps are obvious. Bougainville would declare independence and become the newest member of the international community of states. However, things are not quite as straightforward as they may seem. There are still a number of things that have to happen. First of all, the reaction of the government of Papua New Guinea will be crucial. Although the referendum was agreed as part of a peace settlement to end the conflict in Bougainville, the referendum was officially advisory. There's no formal obligation for Papua New Guinea to accept the result. Of course, the expectation is that it will do so. However, this cannot be taken for granted. Indeed, the first reactions from the government have been very careful. The Prime Minister has asked for time to absorb the result. Assuming that Papua New Guinea does agree to separation, there would still be several further steps required before it actually can become independent. The next stage of the process would be to work out the exact terms of independence. This can be a protracted process. There are all sorts of issues that usually need to be negotiated. For example, there are likely to be questions over the division of state assets and debts. Then there are issues relating to the rights of people from Bougainville living in Papua New Guinea and vice versa. Another potentially complicating factor is whether Bougainville is truly ready for full statehood. While it's tempting to rush to declare independence, sometimes it's better to hold off and make sure that the territory is fully ready. As well as meeting the criteria for statehood, usually understood to be a defined territory, a settled population, governments, and the ability to enter into relations with other states, there is a growing sense that new countries should be able to meet the basic standards of effective governance. A period of transition may therefore be helpful. There may be pressure on Bougainville to make sure that it is fully prepared to meet the terms of full statehood before it makes the final break. The final step is membership of the United Nations. I covered this process in detail in another video. I've put the link above and in the description below. Essentially, however, this should be a relatively straightforward process. If Papua New Guinea has assented to Bougainville's independence, then there would seem to be little reason why the Security Council would not be prepared to make the necessary recommendation to the General Assembly, or why the General Assembly would be unwilling to formally vote in favour of membership. At which point it will become the 194th member of the United Nations and the first country to join the organisation in almost a decade. All this, however, assumes that Papua New Guinea accepts the outcome of the vote and agrees to independence. But what happens if it refuses? If that were to happen, it would obviously have serious potential implications. Most obviously, many observers would worry about a return to fighting on the island. Another option would be for Bougainville to opt for a unilateral declaration of independence. This too could spark fighting if Papua New Guinea decided to oppose this by force. In such a case, a lot would depend on the reactions of the international community. Given that an independence referendum had been agreed to as part of a peace deal and that it had been conducted with international oversight, there may be an expectation that Papua New Guinea should accept the result. In which case, although the international community usually strongly opposes unilateral acts of secession, Bougainville may find support for its decision to break away unilaterally, at least from some quarters. But could it still join the UN? Usually the answer would be no. However, yet again, there may be a greater willingness to make an exception for it. A lot would have to fall into place though. Most importantly, it would require the support of all 5 permanent members of the United Nations: Britain, China, France, Russia and the United States. If they could agree, then it would certainly be possible for Bougainville to join the UN. However, this degree of international unanimity certainly cannot be guaranteed, even given the special circumstances that exist in this particular case. So while Bougainville has voted overwhelmingly in favour of independence, the path to actual statehood and membership of the United Nations is not perhaps as fast or as straightforward as it may seem. There are a number of other steps that need to be taken first. The very first thing that needs to be decided is whether Papua New Guinea agrees to the outcome. Even if it does, the exact terms of separation will then have to be decided. On top of that, there are questions as to whether it might be better to hold off for a while and make sure that Bougainville is fully prepared for the rigours of statehood in the modern international system. Finally, there's the question of UN membership. While all this should be relatively straightforward if Papua New Guinea does agree to independence, if it doesn't, then a lot will depend on the reactions of the international community. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please take a moment to hit the like button below, and don't forget to subscribe to get further content and press the bell to be notified when I upload new videos. And do let me know in the comments section if you have any questions or if there are any other topics you'd really like to see me cover. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you again next time.